Hi, hello everyone, this is Claire, and this is the first episode, of Captain's Log. I'm deciding to deem this one the first episode, and deem the video I put out last week to be a pilot episode 0. Because, as some of you know, I put out a little video last week with the intention of making a video series out of it called Captain's Log, but the audio was pretty screwed up. Some of you chose to watch through it anyway, and big thanks for those that did, but I know some of you just couldn't handle the headache-inducing weird echo that was on it. I did want to just try and fix it in a video editor, audio editor, and stick it back out remastered, but I just couldn't get it sounding right. So what I've decided to do instead is I'm going to do what I wanted to do this week. I'm going to go over my week 2 games, and I'm going to go over, I guess, a new conceptual thing. But before I do that, I am just going to hopefully briefly, or as brief as possible, go over what I went over in the last week's video for people that didn't see it, because it was meant to be like the basic foundations of how I think about drafting to build off of, and maybe the rest of the videos won't make much sense without it. So we're going to go over that again. I'll try and put a timestamp in the description of the YouTube video if I can figure out that, so those that did watch the first one and don't want to go through that again can just jump to the new stuff. But without further ado, let's go. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Claire. I've been playing Dota for however long now. I've been specifically playing Dota 2 amateur leagues for about 3 years. I've been captaining in them for about 2. At first, I was pretty nervous about in-game captaining. I do like the out-of-game captaining stuff, like arranging scrims or whatever, but I'd try and hand off the hero drafting to some better player, because I was like a 3K player, and I was playing RD12, so I was on the low end of it. That was old RD12 too, where there was like 6 players, so being 3K meant you were benched half the time. But since then, you know, I participated in LD12, which really boosted my confidence, forcefully boosted my confidence, going from one of the weaker players to one of the better players. I also played under an RD12 captain called Sasquatch that inspired me to be a better captain and gave me some insights onto hero drafting, as well as talking to just other RD12 people, Luke, Treebeard being 2 notable ones. And so this is the culmination of that, what I think about hero drafting. I'm only a 4K player, by the way, still, or I guess arguably 5K. So I'm by no means an expert on this, but I do have formulated opinions now, and maybe for some people in LD12 where I'm planning to post this, that could be useful on drafting better yourself. Maybe you'll agree with and apply some things, whatever. Up to y'alls. So this is the in-game captain screen. It looks different when you're picking than when you're spectating. One quick thing to note is that down the middle, there are numbers 1 through 22, one for each slot. They don't differentiate between picks, slots, and bans. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. I'm going to refer to these a lot. So when I say like 7th slot or 14th slot, I am literally referring to the slots. So if I say like 4th slot, I'm not referring to the 4th pick. I'm referring to that ban that's labeled 4, the 4th slot of the draft. Also rounds, it's a bit more common term, but each set of bans and picks is a round, or at least that's how I refer to it, and I think most people do call them this. So 1 through 10, first 6 bans, first 4 picks, that's round 1, 11 through 18, that's round 2, and then the last bit, 19 through 22, that's round 3. So the first pick of round 2 would be slot 15. Alright, there we go. So let's start with 1 through 6. These are the first 6 bans of the game. These are heroes that can be banned before anyone has time to pick them. I don't put too much focus on this area when I'm when I'm coaching LD12 teams. I often end up focusing on the drafts, because I think it's usually a really easy area to fix. But I don't focus on these starting bans, because realistically, all that happens here is that you're going to go look at the enemy team, you're going to scout them, you're going to say, hey, what comfort heroes do they like picking? Specifically, what comfort heroes do they like picking in the first phase? What are the strong meta heroes they like picking? and say, hey, these are the 3 we want to deal with the least, we're banning those ones. Simple as that. You don't need to do much else to it. The 7th pick, or sorry, the 7th slot, kind of ties into that. So the 7th slot, generally speaking, is a pretty bad pick. You're picking a hero into 5 unknowns, which is scary. The more unknown heroes you pick into, the worse that individual slot is, because the more likely or more possible it is for that hero to get countered. But the one positive thing about first overall pick is if there's a singular hero that is just super strong and both teams want, right now in the meta, or at least the RD12 meta, that hero's Night Stalker. Having first pick means you either get that hero or you force the opponent to ban it. So with Night Stalker, right now in RD2L, if you have first pick, you just leave it alone. If you have second pick, you have to ban it, because no one in their right mind wants to play against it. That might have changed real recent, because they nerfed him, but generally speaking, if there's a hero like that in the meta, that is a little power to the 7th pick. But otherwise it's a weak pick. It's a weak pick slot. You're no idea what the enemy team is when you pick this hero. So what do? How do you utilize this slot? What you have to do here is that you have to pick a generically strong hero. So with that like super OP hero, like something like Night Stalker, that's pretty easy, because you pick something like a Night Stalker, you pick that OP meta hero, and the reason it's an OP meta hero is because no one can properly counter it. It's just too strong. Realistically, or hopefully, those heroes are getting banned, so what you're doing instead is you're picking any other hero that you think is strong enough, or just generic enough, to not get countered. You'll see a lot of pause 5s get picked here, that are just... you don't really want to counter them. Something like a Jakiro or Crystal Maiden. Sure, there are some heroes that are better against them than other heroes, but, like, what's the point? It's just a support. It's always going to do its job. It's always going to be casting those spells. The Maiden's always going to be supplying her mana aura. There's nothing you can really do to stop that completely. Alternatively, once again, just a generically strong hero you like, that isn't very easily countered. I see Centaur first picks a fair amount, because he's just one of the stronger offlaners right now, and even his specific lane counters, he can deal with them. They don't fully counter him out. Similar to the 5 concept, there are some 4 heroes that get picked pretty early, because they always do their job. They can't really be fully countered out. It's not worth focusing on them too much. Mirana, I think, is one I'm seeing picked a lot very early nowadays. But yeah, so that's the 7th slot. 8 and 9. The next 2 picks, the 8 and 9 slots, this is really the main reason I do not like having second pick. I much prefer having first pick. Because these 8 and 9 slots are very similar to first pick, in that you're picking into a bunch of unknowns. Assuming that the first pick captain did their job, and they picked a hero that was just generically strong, or generically not counterable enough, you still have no idea what you're picking into here. It's just a bunch of unknown heroes. It's an unknown game plan, and if you pick something that can be countered, or can be abused, it's going to get countered or abused if the other captain knows what they're doing. If you end up picking both supports, that can get abused, because there's some things that generally come from the supports, like most CC and most save comes from the 2 supports. If they're lacking in some way, that can get just immediately abused by the 10th slot. Similarly, if you pick a complete lane, if you pick 2 heroes that are 100% going to be like the 3 and the 4 or the 1 and the 5, you can immediately get lane countered with the 10th slot. So what you end up needing to do here is, once again, going for generically strong heroes that are difficult to counter. It's a lot more difficult to do because you have 2 of them now, not just 1 of them, and you don't apply any pressure with OP heroes, because if you let an OP hero through, the other captain already took it. Another thing you can do to make these picks less bad is picking a hero that is flexible. So a hero that can be played in multiple roles. usually ends up being like 4s, I find. So a 4 that can also be an off lane, that can also be a 5, or that can also be a mid. Sometimes you also have heroes that can be multiple core roles. So something that can 1 or 2, something that can 2 or 1 or 3. I think you sometimes see, like back in the day, Void can kind of be picked for either. Not nowadays. I don't think there's many of those in the current meta, but they do conceptually exist. But yeah, overall, 2 very difficult picks. There's ways you can like make it work. Obviously, you pick heroes you think are strong. You pick heroes that are flexible. Alternatively, you also pick heroes that are kind of like cheesy strong. So something I saw a lot in the last season's LD12 or RD12 playoffs was Lina Centaur. That's a lane. There's absolutely nothing you can do to lane counter that. It's just a strong lane. In BDL, which is a lower MMR average, there was a lot of Grimstroke combos. Grimstroke Doom, Grimstroke Warlock. They're theoretically easier to counter, but in a lower skill environment, they don't get countered very easily. But yeah, overall, difficult pick slots. Number 10. This is like one of the best picks of the draft, I think, at least for how early it is, and one of the reasons I really like first pick. Because you're picking into 2 known heroes now, so you can potentially pick a counter or pick a hero that's good against the enemy team. But very importantly, you immediately follow this up with 2 bans. So what you can do if, say, they reveal their offlaner, you pick a carry that lanes fine, and then you ban 2 counters to the carry, non-lane counters, ban 2 other core counters. I've done this with Lifestealer a couple times. They pick an offlaner, Lifestealer's pretty decent against it, alright, we'll pick the Lifestealer, and then we'll ban 2 Lifestealer counters, because there really is only a set number of good Lifestealer counters. And that's with a lot of pause 1s, I think. That the amount of counters they have tend to be a bit lower than other heroes, at least in my opinion, or more distinct, maybe not lower, but more distinct. Like, there are very clear-cut counters to a lot of carry heroes, and by picking it in the 10th slot, you can just immediately take 2 of them out of the game, which is really big. And that's kind of all I'm really going to say on the next phase of bans, too. They're most often going to be used to, if you're the first pick captain, they're usually going to be used to protect your early picks. If not, similar to the first set of bans, you're just banning things you think will work well on their team. If you're the second pick captain, this kind of works in reverse. So the 15th slot is pretty similar to the 10th slot, but as I said, in reverse. You can ban 2, you can have a pick in mind, ban 2 heroes that are good against that pick, and then take the pick. There is always the fear that that hero could get banned, because unlike the 10th pick is stronger because there's no bans before it. If you're thinking the hero is like, oh yeah, we'll pick it right now, they can't ban it, they can't respond until after, and then you're already banning the counters. 15, a little harder because there can be a response, but it can still work in a similar way. 16 and 18. I'm going to talk about these together partially because they're kind of similar. 16... Okay, well, we'll actually just start with 16. 16 is like the turning point of the draft. We've already done the first 5 picks, so we're now kind of in like the second half of the draft, kind of. So for this pick, you can just pick a hero that counters the things that have already been picked, or you just think, yeah, it works pretty well here. There's only 2 picks left for the opposing captain, so there's much less concern of it getting countered. You can pick something, as long as it's not, like, super easy to do. Like, you don't want to, like, pick a Slark and then they immediately take a Bloodseeker. That doesn't feel very good. You maybe want to save that one. But, you know, just some, usually a 3, 5, 4 hero that it just looks good in the draft. You just pick it. I think it's probably the easiest slot to pick in the draft. Because you just pick a good hero. You look, there's 3 heroes showing. You've already picked 2 of your own lineup. You should have a pretty good idea of what's going on now. You can pick a hero like that. 18 pick is kind of similar concept here, in that now you've seen 4 picks. 17, not much to say about 17. It's later in the draft. There's no bans after it or immediately before it, so you do risk getting countered by the 18th pick, but it is what it is. 18th pick, very similar to 16, as I said. You can just counter. It's later in the draft. They're having less and less opportunities to counter the heroes you pick. But one significant thing about the 18th slot that makes it different from the 16th is that, very bizarrely, I think somewhat counterintuitively, the 18th pick is better than the 21st. Generally speaking, the later the pick, the better. right? Because the later the pick, the less chances the enemy captain has to counter you. With 18 and 21, it's a little different, because there is no picks between 18 and 21. There's only bans. So if you pick something 18, they don't have a chance to immediately counter it in any different than they would 21. Their next pick comes after both of those. But there is this ban set, and that hero can get banned out. So, to try and explain this better, maybe, if there's a hero that is really good, and you're looking at the 4 heroes they have picked, and you're looking at what's on your team, and you're saying, hey, this is the perfect hero, there's no reason to wait. Pick it right then, because if you wait and the enemy captain's thinking the same thing, they're just going to ban it. The 21st pick you want to reserve for the hero that's less important. Ideally, you have both heroes in mind when you're coming to this 18th pick. You're having an idea of both the 18th and the 21st slot, and then you decide what order you want to pick them in, and what ban you want to do between. So, if, let's say, for example, you need an offlaner and a mid, if there's 2 options you think that are good for offlane, but only 1 good option for mid, pick the mid first, because if one of those options gets banned for offlane, it's fine. But if your only mid option gets banned, hey, maybe you're screwed. Maybe there was literally nothing else you feel you want to pick. So yeah, that's that. 1921 or 1920 bans. They're just bans again. You kind of usually you're either banning to set up. So if you're the first pick captain, you're banning to set up for the 21st slot or protect what you picked in the 18th slot, whichever one's more important. If you're the second pick captain, you just kind of have to guess here. Guess what hero they want to pick, what's the best hero, and ban it out. And if you're lucky, they kind of only had one thing in mind, and now they can't pick it. The 22nd slot is the last overall pick of the game. It's very simple. I don't think this really needs any explanation. I think this is the slot that even very new captains fully understand. I think it's why very new captains tend to take second pick when they get the chance. Even though I do personally think it's a mistake. I think these earlier picks are so difficult to use that second pick is just worse. But there's no denying that the last pick of the draft is pretty strong. You're picking whatever hero you want that isn't banned, obviously. There's no counters that they can pick to it because they've already picked their entire lineup. I think it can be hard to fully utilize. I think the issue that happens here is because the earlier picks are so much better for the first pick captain, very often when you get to this final pick, you're already having a bit of trouble. There's problems you need to address. Hopefully, if the first pick captain is a good captain, or maybe not hopefully for you, but if the first pick captain is a good captain, their 18 and 21 heroes, they're pretty good. They're probably giving you problems that you need to solve. Oh, they've picked this carry hero we don't really have answers to. They've also picked a mid hero we don't really have answers to. I have to deal with both of these problems at once. It's definitely doable, but it's going to be harder the smaller your hero pool. So yeah, 22nd pick. It's pretty simple. Simultaneously hard to use, because you really do often have to get, like, the perfect pick. You know, sometimes you can get away with just a good pick, but very often it feels like you need to have the perfect, game-winning, draft-saving pick. So yeah. That's my explanation of these. I'm going to go over now a couple of games. A couple of my RD12 games that I just played on Sunday, my Week 2 RD12 games. I'll try and retouch on some of these concepts with actual examples. I know when I'm just, like, blabbering in front of this blank screen, it might be kind of hard to understand what I'm saying, but hopefully there's some good examples in here to better communicate what I'm trying to say. And which ones are they? Dark Willow. Yeah, this is the one. Man, my mouth is really dry. I hope I'm not, like, smacking in my mic a lot. Just gonna tap real quick. That might make a buzzing noise, but it'll go away soon enough. Okay, let's move through this. Okay, so now we're in the spectator draft screen, which is a bit different. One thing you'll notice is that those numbers have disappeared. I'm probably going to keep referring to them because I'm very used to them at this point. Apologies if that's confusing for anyone. Another thing that's kind of annoying with a spectator screen is that once the final hero is picked, the bans disappear. And so for the sake of this video, we're going to pause before the final hero is picked. I will tell you what that hero is, I won't make you guess, I promise. But yeah, I don't know, it's just meant to like look better for esports, I guess. Try and be more cinematic. For these purposes, it's just annoying. Okay, so the last pick here is Death Prophet. And we'll get back to that, but we're going to start at the beginning of the draft. What do we see here? As I said before, these early bans, these first 3 bans from both teams, for the most part, they're whatever. They're going to be super subjective, based on the captain, based on the team they're facing. The only really objective thing is what I previously mentioned with Night Stalker. They end up having second pick both of these games. This is a best of 2 series, and they end up banning Night Stalker both games. They kind of had one less ban. If I was second pick, I would have banned Night Stalker. That's just how it works right now. But yeah, that's what those are. I had first pick. You can kind of see the arrows, hopefully. I know I use very low resolution, but I had first pick, believe me. I picked Crystal Maiden. I already kind of gave this example in the conceptual talk, the theory talk. It's a generic hero. The only thing you really want to have against a Maiden is a stun to cancel her ult, and hopefully you already have one of those. If your draft doesn't have stuns, you're going to have a lot more issues than a Crystal Maiden. So, generic hero, doesn't really give away anything. It's just a 5, potentially, in rare situations, a 4. What do they then pick? They then have this double pick. They pick Warlock Spiritbreaker. And this is the problem with these 2 picks. They decide to pick both their supports. And that's an issue because when we talk about saves, like 90% of saves in the game come from the support duo. And neither of these heroes that they've picked can really be flexed into other roles easily. They could maybe run like an offlane Spiritbreaker. They could go completely crazy and run a mid-Warlock, but it's not ideal. They don't want to do that. And so what do we do here? We immediately pick a Faceless Void. Faceless Void you need very specific saves against. You can't just use a heal or a purge. Or, not a purge, it's a dispel, that's what it's called. You can't really just use a heal or a dispel, you usually need to, like, completely remove them from the chrono. Use, like, a Pudge Hook or a Venge Swap to get them out. Use, like, an OD Astral or a Shadow Demon Bubble to stop them from getting hit. Try and use something like a Dazzle Grave or an Oracle ulti to stop them from dying right away. A lot of these options are no longer there for them. They can't pick an Oracle, they can't pick a Dazzle, they can't pick a Shadow Demon, because they've already picked both supports. And although Warlock does a decent job at counter-initiating, by just dropping his ult on top of the Void and Chrono, it's not ideal, it's not really enough. So I think I made pretty good use of that 10th pick that I talked so highly of here. Let's go on to the bans. I don't ban 2 Void counters. I ban Wraith King. Wraith King is a Void counter because if you kill him in Chrono, he doesn't really care. Zeus was more of a subjective ban. Their mid laner plays a lot of Zeus. He's actually not really a mid laner. He's a support player that plays some off lane, or some safe lane, in his spare time. So he was mostly sticking to pretty simple heroes, and Zeus plus Warlock is kind of a scary combo. Because Fatal Bonds plus whatever Zeus's ult is called is just a ton of damage. So we ban the Zeus, we ban a Void counter with Wraith King. They then have 15th pick. They ban 2 offlaners, so they don't set up for this 15th pick at all. I don't think they really felt the need to. I already revealed my entire safe lane, so they probably thought, Axe looks pretty good here. He can potentially just blink Blade Mail, kill Void before Void does anything. They felt comfortable laning it into those 2 heroes, so they pick it. I then pick a Dark Willow. I just wanted a Yul's Buyer, really. I mean, I don't have the biggest hero pool either, so I was pretty limited to what I could do here. There maybe were some heroes whose base kits could do something better, but personally I'm thinking I'll just buy Willow. I can buy Yules. Yules is very good versus Axe, because you Yules him in the call and people can't hit him, can't kill themselves on Blade Mail. Can also Yules off Warlock Bonds in desperate situations, can Yules to cancel charge. Just a lot of good Yules utility this game. And Dark Willow's one of not many support heroes, honestly, that are okay with first buying a Yules. They then pick Ursa. If you can get your ult off on Ursa before a chrono hits you, you can survive a little longer. That's nice. You can potentially bash and kill a Void, but generally speaking, I think Void and Willow are maybe a little more escape heavy than you want as an Ursa. I guess you can just kind of sit and wait for a Willow to come out of Shadow Realm, but whatever. They chose an Ursa. I think they maybe felt they couldn't pick that many carries, because Void, for a lot of carries, you can just chrono them and kill them, which is a problem. They also don't know what the offlane hero is yet. I haven't revealed it. So once again, that 17th pick, all the picks for the second pick Captain are kind of scary, because you're so often, the first pick Captain gets a chance to just immediately counter you. And that's exactly what we did here. They pick the Ursa, and we say, hey, what's the offlane hero we want here? Ursa's a very oppressive safe laner. There's not a lot of offlaners that can deal with him. We decided we want Bat. We don't think the other heroes are particularly good against Bat. They don't have any purges outside of Ursa's ultimate ability. They once again don't have any saves. They have no saves on this team. Nothing for Lasso. It's kind of a weird looking lineup here because we're completely lacking in frontline. But we decided Bat was such a great lane counter to Ursa and decent enough for the rest of the game. Ideally, for the remainder of the game, we wanted some kind of frontliner, but this worked just because it's such a good lane counter to Ursa. And I'll actually be going into a little more detail in a bit here about why we were so intent on lane countering this safe lane player. We get the next two bans. They ban Invoker. Invoker plus Void, very scary. Like, you don't even really need any farm. You don't even really need any skill on that Invoker. Void chronos someone, the Invoker walks up and drops as many spells as humanly possible, and it's very effective. We had intended to pick Pugna before we banned here. He's very good against Axe. In a similar way that Yules is good against Axe, you stop people from auto-attacking the Axe. He's pretty good against Ursa. Similarly, the Decrepify is just very nice against right-clickers. It's pretty good against most safe lane carries, really. We decided that Quap would be kind of a problem in lane for him, as well as potentially if she got Steam going, got rolling, got snowballing, could also be a problem for Void. Just jump on him with Orchid and kill him before he can do anything, before he has farm. We also kind of had an idea what they might pick. We were expecting either a Death Prophet or a Kunkka, and my mid player said, I don't mind playing Pugna against either of those heroes. They did end up picking a Death Prophet as expected. We did end up winning this game. I think our draft had risks to it. I don't think this was a perfect draft by any means. They had really strong team fight, Warlock, Death Prophet. There were definitely times when it was very hard to fight into them, especially without a real frontliner. No one to build a pipe, or a mech, or a Crimson Guard. We didn't have that kind of hero. But all in all, our offlane went really well. Batrider stomped Ursa. They didn't really have anything to deal with the Void once he got items. The Batrider Willow combo was also very good because Lasso into Bedlam provides all the damage that Batrider lacks. They couldn't really deal with it. There was only a short period of this game where they were stronger than us. There was like this mid-game period where they were able to group, so they didn't care so much about Bat pickoffs, and we didn't have enough items on the Void to feel comfortable fighting them as much as possible, as much as they wanted us to fight them, but eventually we got Void items. We got items on some other heroes, and they lost the game. Okay, that's that draft. Overall, I was pretty happy with my draft. Definitely a bit funky, but overall pretty happy with it. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, I didn't download this replay. Whoops. Sorry, you're gonna have to wait here for a bit. I do not edit these. Okay, at least it's going pretty fast, eh? Probably I'm just gonna tab for a second. Sorry if that makes a buzzing noise again. Make sure this is still recording. Here we go. Okay, let's move ahead again. The bans, I believe, pretty much stayed the same. They have to ban Void again, or Night Stalker again. He's a spell called Void. They have to ban Night Stalker again, because we have first pick, and they can't let us first pick it. They keep the other two bans the same. I believe, all three bans the same again. I first picked Crystal Maiden again. I just like the opener. We'll let these two finish before I talk any further. You'll see we end up thinking about that slot quite a bit, because I'm trying to think ahead. I'm trying to think of two heroes at once on that. So I end up saving a lot of reserve time for this, because I'm potentially picking either my offlane or my mid in this slot. And there's not an obvious choice. It's not like, oh, we're going to pick the mid as late as possible, because, as I said in the conceptual part of this video, this slot is stronger. This 18th slot, because they're less likely to ban it, so we gotta figure out what heroes do we want, which is most likely to get banned, and pick that one. So, okay, or most troublesome if it gets banned, I should say, because I don't think they were gonna ban an Enigma, but we wanted it, just in case. Anyway, but before we get to that part of the draft, let's start at the beginning again. I pick a Crystal Maiden. It's very generic. It doesn't give away anything. It's a Maiden. They pick their two supports, again. They pick a Jakiro and a Dark Willow. This time, we're less enthused by the Void pick. I don't remember if there's a specific reason. I think Dark Willow is pretty annoying against him, because unlike Warlock, whose counter-engage is just, I'm going to BKB Piercing Stun you for a second, if she gets a Fear on your heroes that are trying to do damage in Chrono, that Chrono's just wasted. She also has her W if she can personally avoid if she gets chronoed. Both Yule Spires as well, which is pretty annoying before Void gets BKB. But the main reason that I didn't pick Void here, and I picked Lifestealer, is that, once again, these supports are like your primary form of CC most of the time. And the CC from these two supports, although it's very good, it's very predictable. It's very easy to get rid of with a spell like Rage. Dark Willow's Bramble. Bramble doesn't stop you from using spells or items. You can rage it off. Her stun, Cursed Crown, or whatever it's called, literally has a timer on it. Very easily rage that off. Jakiro's slows, once again, slows don't stop you from using spells or items. Very easily rage them off. And even Ice Path, which is like the only real stun they have so far, you can see it coming. It's got quite a bit of an animation to it. You can potentially rage it off. And finally, Dark Willow Fear, the ultimate ability lockdown, has a massive wind-up, really loud noise, and a projectile. Very possible to rage dodge that as well. So we're like, this is the perfect Lifestealer game, let's just pick it right away. What do we ban? We ban Juggernaut and Void. These are two Lifestealer counters. As I'll go into at the end of this draft, we are very concerned about their Pause 1 player, and how good he is, so we ban two Pause 1 counters to Lifestealer in particular. They ban Phoenix and Axe. I'm gonna be honest, I have no clue why they banned Phoenix. They banned it the first game too. I mean, I have a vague idea. My offlaner is like his most played hero, but I don't think he's played it in months. They also banned the Axe. I think they probably didn't feel very comfortable picking Axe, because Lifestealer's pretty good against him, and they probably thought it was a strong enough hero that if they weren't going to pick it, they weren't going to let us have it, which is very understandable. I think I would have definitely considered picking Axe here after seeing their next two picks. They instead pick a Slardar. This hero is quite good against Lifestealer. He has the BKB Piercing Bash, he has the BKB Piercing Negative Armor, and Lifestealer naturally very low armor. So Slardar, very good hero against him. I then pick a Wind Ranger. I kind of mentioned last draft, I don't have a very large hero pool, so I decided, hey, they don't look very good against Wind Ranger, so I'm just going to pick it. There wasn't really any nuance or specifics here. I wasn't like, oh, Wind Ranger is super good against these heroes. It was just, she's not bad against them, and I actually play this hero, so I'm going to pick it. They then take Slark. Slark is also very good against Lifestealer. He's not good against Wind Ranger, and he's not very good against Crystal Maiden. Not that he's bad against Crystal Maiden per se, but because he doesn't have a stun, if she pops ult and she gets that like plus 20 armor, it's kind of hard for him to stand in it. If he has BKB, he can just steal a bunch of stats and kill her. So like I said, he's not bad, but she can be kind of annoying. He's very good against Lifestealer though. I then come up to my next two picks. I need to think of an offlaner here that can lane against a Slark Jakiro. It's a pretty annoying lane. A lot of like strength melees, the traditional ones, aren't super good against it. We also don't have a way to lock down Slark. There aren't a lot of ways in the game to lock down Slark because of his spammable self-dispel. But one of those ways is Enigma, and my offlane player is like, hey, he can't get rid of Black Hole, so I'll just Black Hole him if you pick me Enigma. And I said, alright, I'll do it. So we picked Enigma, and he spent all game talking about how Slark can't purge Black Hole. It was good fun. But anyway, next up, they ban Pugna. We picked it last game, it did pretty well. I think they were just scared of it. They now have two heroes that are reliant on right-click. It's a little different from the Axe, because Slardar himself is doing the right-clicking, but once again, the Decrepify, a massive issue for them if they're trying to hit people. We banned Death Prophet, they picked it last game. We thought it was pretty annoying. The silence is really annoying for Lifestealer if he doesn't have Rage going. It forces him to get like Manta and or BKB. Items he doesn't mind, but he'd rather not buy. And he also, once again, the large amount of physical damage. He doesn't like physical damage. Ghosts are physical. If it gets amplified by Slardar, he can be in a lot of trouble really fast, and the guy can clearly play it, so we ban that hero. We pick Storm Spirit, not really related to the ban in any way. Once again, as I mentioned, we picked Lifestealer because these stuns are very obvious, they're very avoidable. The Slardar one is a little harder to dodge than the Dark Willow and Jakiro stuns. But generally speaking, not a huge amount of lockdown for Storm. He can offer a lot of damage on top of Black Hole. He's also a very good infest target for the Lifestealer. So we pick Storm. Also, just a hero my mid-player likes. I forgot to tell you what they picked here. They pick a Tinker. I think this was really bad for a lot of reasons. Yeah, the player they picked it for doesn't really play Tinker. And I don't think it's a very good Tinker game. You're very scared of Storm just zipping on top of you and killing you. Lifestealer doesn't really care about Tinker. And Enigma, when he's Black Hole BKBing, also doesn't really care about Tinker. So I don't really know what they thought the Tinker would do here. It's not like they had any good Tinker combos on their own team either, but yeah, they picked a Tinker. My draft was, once again, it was a little weird. This time it was weird because it was very greedy. Lifestealer and Storm and Enigma and Wind Ranger are all pretty greedy for their position. Enigma can take quite a bit more farm than your average offlaner. Lifestealer doesn't really get online without 2 items. Storm tends to do a lot of farming pre-20 minutes, and Wind Ranger, like, that hero as a support is literally still just a core. Like, it doesn't farm in lane, but after lane, it just farms up items and plays like a poor core, really. So it was a little weird, but I think with that last pick Tinker, they lost the draft really hard. They just didn't have any legs to stand on. They were very reliant on a Slark carrying them against an Enigma, which is pretty difficult if you can't end early, because when the game gets later, Enigma's just gonna blink BKB into fights and black hole you. So yeah, those were the drafts this week. Woo! I'm sure this video is getting very long, but I did have, like, one more, I guess, concept I wanted to talk about that I was originally going to do instead of what I did at the beginning of this video, but now I'm doing it as well, because I don't think my drafts next week will be very good examples of this concept. And that is when we're in amateur leagues, like RD2L, where there's a large range of skill, the importance of which players you focus. And so on this team in particular, I don't know how well you can read the names with how low quality I run these videos, but they have 5 players. They have Predict, they have Zend, they have Polo, they have No, and they have... I don't remember who this was. Their tag is standin.gg. Whoever that is. Oh, yeah, I don't know. Oh, that's Gotham. So they have these 5 players. 2 of these players are 5k plus. There's like 2 mid 5k players. That is their mid laner and their safe laner. They then have 2 3k players and 1 like 1k, maybe 2k player. Their mid player, despite being 5k, he doesn't really play mid. I mentioned that before. He's really a support player. He occasionally plays safe lane. He doesn't play a lot of mid heroes. He doesn't lane as well as his MMR would indicate. So my main concern this game was their carry player. And the way I went about this is pretty significant, at least for RD2L, because I didn't just ban all of his heroes. The thing with very high MMR players, they usually, and not always, they're definitely high MMR players with hero pools, but a good high MMR player, you really can't ban out. They played the game too long, they're too good at the game, they just have a plethora of heroes they can pick. And so, in this game, all I really wanted to do was counter him. Like, I banned a couple of his heroes here, because these were very good lifestealer counters, but generally speaking, I focused on the lower MMR players that had smaller hero pools. Their offlaner, for example, once again, there's a lot of, like, weird off-rolling on this team. Their offlane player usually plays support. He's played support almost his entire Dota career, very recently switched to offlane just for the sake of this team. So I saw what are some very easy to execute offlaners that he's been having success with. Centaur, Sand King, Ogre. I ban all 3 of those. Don't worry about him anymore. And then for the carry player, the one who's most likely to carry their games, this guy actually didn't die at all in their first week. He is like KDA on Dota buff, his average KDA across 3 games, because he stood in for another team as well, was 64.0. The guy had played 3 RD2L games without dying, just carried them all. But once again, I'm not targeting his heroes, because his heroes pool is too big. In game 1, he picked an Ursa. I have first pick. I can immediately counter this. I pick a Bat. He cannot lane against that hero. He's a 5k player, a mid 5k player, who just got absolutely dumpstered in lane, because he's playing against 2 4ks that are countering him in his lane. And then I also have a Pugna, which makes his job harder to execute later in the game. This game, I don't really go for a lane counter, per se, although, honestly, there's no hero in the game that wants to lane against Enigma because of the way he denies things. But I pick an Enigma, that, hey, if this game goes kinda late, which it very likely will, because it's already 12 and people don't end early very well, once Enigma has like 2 items, it's very scary for Slark to get into fights. If he gets Black Hold without BKB, he just dies to Storm Spirit. If he gets Black Hold with BKB, he maybe dies anyway, because he's still Black Hold, and there's still a Lifestealer who can hit him, and there's still a Wind Ranger who can focus fire him. Obviously, the Lifestealer Wind Ranger, I didn't know there was a Slark in the game, but the Enigma, I thought, was a pretty nice pick to just stop him from solo carrying. And so that's the very simple concept. Concept number 2 of the Captain's Log series. How to deal with high MMR players, how to deal with low MMR players when drafting in leagues with a wide MMR spread. I think if I was this team, I would not have chose second pick. You may have noticed, and I did mention, I had first pick both games. With second pick, they could get that last pick mid, and theoretically pick a very good matchup for their other 5k player. Issue is, that other 5k player, not really a mid player. The Death Prophet was pretty good, it wasn't anything special, it didn't really counter our lineup, it was just a hero he happened to play. Second game, they completely screwed it up. It's a hero he doesn't play, and it's actively bad against our lineup. Like, it actually does nothing. And once again, I don't want to be too rude, but watching him play, you would not know he was a 5k player. The guy, Tinker, is a pretty unique hero, very unique execution, takes skill to execute, he did not know how to play the hero. I think if I was this team, I would have taken first pick. I would have said, hey, I'm going to be able to pick my important safe lane player, pick his hero later in the draft. Pick his hero in that 18th 21 slot, where the offlaner's probably already been revealed and he can't get countered. Or, hey, if they choose to save the offlaner for last pick anyway to try and counter him, then at least I still get that mid counter. But then, in theory, at least my earlier picks are also better, so... yeah. I think if your best player on your team, if your Giga strong, carry you every game player is your mid, then second pick is a little more legitimate. One thing I actually forgot to go over that I went over the first time I recorded this is that with second pick in particular, I think second pick actually used to be a lot better. There was a point not too long ago where all you needed to do really was to counterpick in lane with your last pick, because deny XP was so obscene that winning your lane could result in you being like twice the level of the enemy mid. Like, I'd see mids that were level 8 and the opposing mid was level 4. It was a really, really sad time to be a not last pick mid in Dota 2. That's changed now. It's very hard to get completely crushed mid. Or maybe not hard to get completely crushed mid, but you won't get crushed as hard. There's more of a limit on how hard you can lose the lane. Like, maybe you still get crushed, maybe you still deny a lot, maybe you still come out very poor and behind in levels, but it won't be that bad. If you're picking something that just needs levels like a Zeus, you'll still have some levels, right? You're not going to be level 4 anymore. You'll hit level 6 at a decent time. You can go do something. And so, yeah, that's just another reason that I just don't think second pick is as strong as some people think it is. TLDR. Man, I'm like full-on rambling stage. Sorry, I like worked all day, all night. Last night I was trying to fix the stupid audio. But hey, we've recorded it. It's probably like an hour. Shout out to anyone who actually finishes this thing. Till next week, which hopefully will be a much shorter video. Claire out, my dudes. Claire out.